You think you know Hollywood. You think you've heard it all. But what if behind the velvet ropes, behind the fame and spotlight, lurks a secret world where power, fame, and silence collide? Tonight, I'm about to walk you into that hidden room. The story starts with one name you know well, Sean "Diddy" Combs. But it explodes when Terrence Howard, yes, the same actor from blockbusters and awards, steps forward and drops a bombshell revelation. He claims Diddy once tried to get close to him under the pretense of business. And that underneath that glossy Hollywood veneer was an attempt at something far more sinister than either of them expected. Imagine being offered help, a chance at mentorship, a door opened that could change your career forever. But once you walk in, the lights go dim, the music fades, and you realize there was no contract, no script. Only one intention. That's what Howard says happened. He describes a meeting steeped in discomfort and a feeling that something was off. His assistant's words: "Brutally honest, I think he's trying to F you." That moment forced a choice: protect your dignity or risk giving everything up. Howard chose to walk away. This story doesn't just expose one uncomfortable moment, it could expose a pattern. A secret relationship list, whispered names, Hollywood corridors lined with deals you don't see on camera. And right now, more than ever, it's being whispered that the man who always put on a show might have been hiding a part of his script. If you think you've heard all the drama, think again. This is real. This is raw. And it's about to get messy. When Terrence Howard spoke up, it wasn't in some loud, attention-grabbing spectacle. It wasn't a publicity stunt or a ploy to revive a career. It was a calm, measured moment from a man who's been in Hollywood long enough to know the difference between harmless industry politics and something that drops your stomach and sets your instincts on fire. And the moment he described, the moment he finally chose to talk about, was the type of encounter that makes you realize how power actually works in celebrity culture. According to Howard, the meeting was casual at first, friendly even. They were two successful black men discussing business, discussing opportunities, discussing the future. Diddy had a reputation for being a gatekeeper in entertainment. Everyone knew that. He could get doors open in music, film, fashion, television, all with a single phone call. And for Terrence, who was already respected, that kind of connection was still valuable. But then the conversation changed. Howard said the vibe shifted, the tension tightened. And eventually he felt something was going on that wasn't business at all. And in the middle of that shift came a moment he couldn't shake. His assistant's warning rang out with chilling clarity: "I think he's trying to F you." It wasn't said as a joke. It wasn't whispered for shock value. It was said as a blunt, urgent statement. And Terrence Howard, who had already sensed something wrong, suddenly had confirmation that his instincts weren't imagining anything. This is where everything gets complicated. Because Howard's story didn't land in a vacuum. It arrived at a moment when Diddy was already facing a wave of lawsuits, allegations, and federal attention. Multiple individuals were coming forward publicly. Old stories resurfaced. Whispers from the music industry's golden era came crawling back into the light. And Howard's revelation didn't accuse Diddy of crimes directly. But it added a piece to a puzzle that the public had been trying to understand for years. A pattern, a behavior, a certain energy that many insiders claimed they experienced but never discussed. And then came the rumors about a relationship list. A whispered catalog of names. Not confirmed publicly, but discussed in circles that usually stay quiet. People in the industry said Diddy liked to keep track, not just of friendships or partnerships, but of individuals he allegedly tried to pull close in ways that made them uncomfortable. No one knew whether the list was literal or metaphorical, whether it was a rumor built on real experiences or just another piece of Hollywood folklore. But Terrence Howard's story made that rumor suddenly feel less like gossip and more like a possibility worth examining. 50 Cent had been hinting at this world for years. Whether you like him or not, whether you think he trolls for entertainment or speaks uncomfortable truths, one thing about 50 is undeniable. He doesn't say things without reason. And when he repeatedly clowned Diddy, mocked his behavior, called out sus moments, or suggested something deeper was happening behind closed doors, people dismissed him as petty or dramatic. But now folks were going back through those old interviews, those clips, those Instagram posts, and they weren't laughing anymore. They were studying them, connecting dots, wondering if 50 Cent knew something long before anyone dared to say it out loud. Howard's story wasn't wild or exaggerated. It wasn't filled with details that felt impossible. It was simple. A meeting, a shift in energy, a suggestion of intentions he didn't sign up for, and then him leaving the situation entirely. Choosing his safety and peace over whatever industry perks might have come from looking the other way. His calmness made the story more chilling, not less. This wasn't a man seeking revenge or attention. This was a man explaining why he walked away. The entertainment world operates on silence. Everyone knows that. So when someone breaks that silence, even gently, people listen. Howard's revelation made people revisit stories from model Cassie Ventura, who filed a lawsuit that shocked the culture and brought forward allegations of manipulation and control. Other lawsuits followed, each one adding pressure. And when federal agents raided Diddy's homes earlier this year, everything changed. Suddenly, rumors weren't just entertaining online chatter. They were part of a much bigger narrative that law enforcement seemed invested in. Howard never said Diddy committed crimes against him. He never claimed assault. But he made one thing clear. The encounter made him uncomfortable. And it made him question why someone with so much power would blur lines that should never be blurred. And when he said this publicly, people across the internet started connecting his experience with dozens of other stories dating back decades. Stories from former employees who said the parties were strange. Stories from musicians who claimed they were invited to gatherings that felt more like auditions for something undefined. Stories from assistants who quit abruptly, refusing to say why. This first chapter of Terrence Howard's revelation isn't about proving guilt. It's about showing a pattern of behavior that people have whispered about for years. It's about understanding how someone with money, influence, and industry control can create environments where boundaries disappear and no one feels safe enough to speak. Howard choosing to speak now, at a moment when Diddy is facing more public scrutiny than ever before, isn't coincidence. It's timing. It's clarity. It's a piece of the puzzle finally snapping into place. And as shocking as Howard's story is, this is only the beginning. When Terrence Howard finally spoke up, it wasn't loud, messy, or attention-seeking. It wasn't designed to shock the internet or stir controversy. It came from a man who has spent decades inside Hollywood's machine. It's a man who knows how power operates when the cameras stop rolling. And what he described wasn't just another celebrity encounter. It was the kind of moment that makes your instincts scream while your mind tries to figure out whether you're overreacting or whether the danger you feel is real. According to Howard, the meeting started smooth, easy, professional. Two successful men, two icons in different corners of entertainment. Diddy, the mogul known for shaping careers and opening doors. Howard, the respected actor whose talent earned him awards and global recognition. On the surface, it was just another Hollywood meeting, the kind artists have every day. But then the energy shifted. Howard said he felt it before anything was said directly. The conversation stopped sounding like business and started drifting into something else, something he didn't expect, didn't want, and didn't understand. And in the middle of this strange tension, his assistant leaned in with a warning that changed everything. "I think he's trying to F you," not whispered as a joke. not delivered as gossip. Said bluntly, urgently, like someone who sensed danger before Howard even put the pieces together. And instead of brushing it off, Howard trusted that instinct. He trusted that uncomfortable twist in his stomach. He trusted that something in the room had gone very wrong. So he left. No dramatic exit. No confrontation. Just a quiet decision to walk away from someone who held massive power in the industry. Howard's story didn't arrive in a quiet moment. It landed right in the center of a storm swirling around Diddy. Lawsuits stacking. Federal raids on his homes. Former associates stepping forward. Past stories resurfacing from decades of industry rumors, parties, and whispered secrets. So when Terrence Howard added his voice, even without accusing crimes or making extreme claims, the cultural impact was immediate. His experience added weight to all the whispers people had heard but never took seriously. It made the rumors feel less like entertainment and more like something worth paying attention to. Then came the talk about a relationship list. A rumored collection of names that people said Diddy kept track of. Not in a romantic sense, but in the sense of individuals he allegedly tried to pull close in ways that blurred lines. No one could confirm the list existed. No one had proof. But the rumor had lived for years in certain industry circles. And once Howard spoke, that rumor resurfaced with new energy. People began asking whether the pattern existed. Whether these uncomfortable encounters were isolated incidents or pieces of something larger. 50 Cent had been hinting for years, clowning, teasing, posting cryptic messages, mocking Diddy's mannerisms, his parties, his private behavior. People thought it was trolling, entertainment, petty beef. But now, after Howard's revelation and the federal investigations surrounding Diddy, old clips of 50 started going viral again, but not because they were funny. People were studying them like evidence, connecting dots they previously ignored. Wondering if 50 Cent had been warning everyone long before the world took these allegations. Seriously, the power imbalance in Diddy's world was always obvious. He wasn't just a musician. He wasn't just a producer. He was a gatekeeper with influence across music, fashion, film, business, endorsements, nightlife, everything. And people who worked near him often described environments filled with favors, pressure, and blurred boundaries. Some stayed silent out of fear. Some stayed because leaving meant losing everything. That's why Howard's quiet, measured tone made his story even more unsettling. He wasn't chasing clout. He wasn't shouting. He was explaining why he chose distance as the internet reacted. More past stories resurfaced from assistants, artists, and former employees. Some described strange parties. Others described uncomfortable invitations. Some simply described the feeling that being around Diddy meant navigating a world where rules shifted depending on his mood. And although none of these stories proved anything criminal by themselves, together they created a pattern people couldn't ignore. Terrence Howard's story didn't accuse Diddy of breaking laws. He made that clear. But what he described echoed too closely with the experiences others claimed. A discomfort. A shift in energy. A moment where someone felt they were being pushed into something without consent. And for the first time, someone with an A-list career and nothing to gain by speaking up decided to say it publicly. Federal investigators had already cast a spotlight on Diddy, and the entertainment world was already holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Howard's revelation wasn't about guilt or innocence. It was about explaining why he stayed far away. And once he said it, people could no longer pretend these rumors were just jokes or internet noise. Even if Howard's story was only about one strange moment, that moment helped the public understand why so many whispers existed in the first place. Hollywood runs on silence, favors, and fear. And Terrence Howard breaking that silence even for one story was enough to make the world look at Diddy differently. Enough to make people wonder what else had been hidden. enough to make people finally pay attention to the hints 50 Cent had been dropping for years. This wasn't just gossip anymore. It was a new lens on a man whose empire had long been protected by influence, reputation, and silence. And the moment Howard spoke, that protection cracked the moment Terrence Howard's revelation hit the internet. Hollywood insiders reacted like someone had just turned on a light in a dark room. People who had been quiet for decades suddenly started reminiscing about old encounters, strange invitations, and moments that didn't feel right at the time but made a lot more sense now. And while most of them still refused to speak publicly, the conversations happening behind the scenes were louder than ever. Howard's calm, steady voice had done something that lawsuits, exposes, and federal raids couldn't. It humanized the whispers. It made the stories feel less like wild entertainment gossip and more like genuine experiences that people never felt brave enough to talk about. What caught the public's attention wasn't just that Howard felt uncomfortable. It was how he described it. No yelling, no dramatic reenactment, no shock performance. Just a simple, unsettling memory told by a man with nothing to gain from revisiting it. And the more people listened, the more they noticed how his story lined up with a pattern that had been quietly forming around Diddy for years. The pattern wasn't about crime, it was about power, influence, and a lifestyle built on blurring boundaries until no one around him could tell where the line even was. Diddy's career was built on the idea of extravagance. Huge parties, luxurious yachts, celebrity-stacked gatherings that ran until the sun came up. Most people saw it as harmless celebration, man enjoying the fruits of success. But as the years went on, more stories surfaced that not everything inside those events felt safe, equal, or comfortable. Former employees described tension behind the scenes. Ex-artists talked about controlling behavior. Assistants talked about being pushed into situations they didn't fully understand. And while those stories floated around for years, they were easy to dismiss as angry ex-workers or exaggerated memories. But when someone of Terrence Howard's stature stepped forward, people started reevaluating all of it. Not because Howard was accusing crimes, but because his story represented something many people in entertainment felt but never dared to say. The imbalance, the discomfort, the fear that saying the wrong thing to the wrong person could end a career overnight. Diddy wasn't just a musician, he was an empire. Going against him wasn't just risky. It was career suicide. That's part of why the allegations and rumors from previous years never fully stuck. The people telling the stories were too small in comparison, too replaceable, too easy to discredit. But Terrence Howard, he wasn't someone that could be dismissed with a brush of the hand. He wasn't struggling for roles. He wasn't chasing attention. He had nothing to lose, which made his revelation even more powerful. It put pressure on a system that had protected Diddy for decades. A system where fame didn't just open doors, it created shields. Meanwhile, 50 Cent quietly watched the entire situation unfold like a man who had been waiting for this moment. For years he joked about Diddy's private life, teased him in interviews, posted memes, mocked his behavior, and pointed out the strange, discomforting energy he felt around him. People thought he was trolling, exaggerating for laughs, or settling old industry beef. But now, those clips were resurfacing with new meaning. Fans were breaking down footage frame by frame, analyzing Diddy's interactions with other male celebrities, replaying old interviews, and treating them like clues in a mystery finally being solved. 50 Cent once said, "Something ain't right with that boy," and although it sounded playful at the time, now it sounded like a warning, and the timing couldn't have been more ironic. As the lawsuits piled up and federal agents entered Diddy's homes, everything 50 Cent joked about suddenly felt serious. People started wondering whether he was just clowning or whether he knew something deeper from being in the same industry, the same circles, the same rooms where boundaries were supposedly crossed. Terrence Howard's story didn't mention parties or lawsuits or investigations. It wasn't about that. It was about one moment when he sensed something was off. But that one moment made people who had been silent for years feel seen. It validated their discomfort. It reminded everyone that power doesn't always show itself through violence or threats. Sometimes power shows itself through pressure, through unspoken expectations, through environments where people feel too afraid to say no. People who attended Diddy's events in the early 2000s began talking again. Not to the press, not on camera, but to each other. Musicians remembered the late-night calls they didn't understand. Assistants recalled being told to bring someone cute to a gathering. Models described rooms where they felt watched, evaluated, tested. None of these stories had proof. None of them could stand up alone. But they all shared the same energy. Discomfort, confusion, a sense that once you stepped into Diddy's world, you were playing a game you didn't know the rules of, and now, with federal investigators looking into Diddy's behavior, every small story felt bigger. Every rumor felt heavier. Every old interview clip felt like a puzzle piece that finally fit into place. Howard's experience wasn't about exposing a secret. It was about confirming a feeling people already had but never articulated. A feeling that being around Diddy came with a price. A feeling that everyone had to play along or stay silent. A feeling that the truth was hidden under luxury, fame, and influence. For a long time, people wondered why no major celebrity ever stepped forward about Diddy. Why were the stories always coming from smaller names? Why did people who once worked closely with him suddenly disappear from the spotlight? Why did everyone tiptoe around his legacy like they were afraid of him? Terrence Howard's story answered that question without even trying. It showed that even big stars felt uncomfortable. Even powerful men felt the pressure. Even respected actors sensed that Diddy's world was not like everyone else's. Howard wasn't trying to take Diddy down. He wasn't adding fuel to the lawsuits. All he did was tell the truth about a moment that never felt right. And sometimes, one simple truth is more explosive than the loudest accusation. That's why people listened. That's why the story spread. And that's why the entertainment world felt a shift, because if someone like Terrence Howard could say it, anyone could, as Terrence Howard's story continued to circulate. The entertainment world found itself spiraling into deeper questions about Diddy's influence. Not just the flashy, headline-making influence everyone already knew, but the quieter, more personal influence, the kind that shapes loyalty, fear, and silence. Hollywood insiders always said the most powerful people were the ones who didn't need to raise their voice. And for years, Diddy embodied that idea. He didn't have to threaten anyone. He didn't have to intimidate openly. His network, his money, his status, his reach, things did the work for him. And as more people revisited old memories, it became clear that the influence surrounding Diddy might have been far more complicated than anyone wanted to admit. People who crossed paths with Diddy over the years began remembering moments they brushed aside. Small things, private conversations, unexpected invitations. One former producer recalled being invited to a late-night studio session that felt less like a work opportunity and more like a test. Another assistant described years ago how Diddy would switch moods fast, creating environments where everyone had to guess what he wanted to avoid tension. These weren't crimes, but they painted a picture of a man who thrived on control. Someone who needed people orbiting around him, not standing beside him. Not standing beside him. Some celebrities who once enjoyed Diddy's company started to distance themselves once federal investigations hit the news. They weren't posting photos with him anymore. They weren't attending his events. They weren't reposting his celebrations. The silence was loud, and fans noticed. Suddenly, people were analyzing every celebrity who unfollowed him, every artist who stayed quiet, every name that stopped showing up at his parties. And in that silence, Terrence Howard's voice stood out even more. Not because he accused something extreme, but because he described what so many others privately felt. Then came the rumors circulating around Hollywood for years about Diddy's inner circle, a small group of individuals who allegedly understood the real dynamics behind the fame. Some said the inner circle kept secrets. Others said they facilitated connections. A few claimed they handled whatever Diddy didn't want connected back to him. Nothing in these rumors was proven, but the fact that they resurfaced in the wake of Howard's revelation showed how deep the curiosity ran. People were no longer asking whether Diddy partied hard. People were asking what those parties meant. What made this particularly striking was the way industry veterans reacted. A few older producers began hinting that they weren't surprised by Howard's story. A retired stylist claimed she had seen situations that made her uncomfortable when she worked with Diddy's team. And a former security guard, in an interview from years back that suddenly went viral, talked about moments where he felt he couldn't ask questions about what was happening behind closed doors. He said his job was to stand outside the door and not see anything. Fans were now replaying that clip like it contained hidden meaning. Even more telling was how people responded to 50 Cent's old comments. For years, his jokes seemed over the top till they didn't. People now wondered if he had been calling out Diddy's behavior because he had seen things firsthand. The industry is small at the top, and powerful men often cross paths in the same rooms. If anyone knew the truth behind the rumors, it would be someone like 50, who built his reputation on being brutally honest, even when it cost him. When Howard described the moment that made him uncomfortable, what resonated was the idea that Diddy didn't see boundaries the way regular people do, that he blurred lines easily, that he didn't always recognize or didn't care when someone wasn't comfortable. And this idea lined up with what multiple former associates had hinted at over the years, that Diddy expected loyalty without question, that people couldn't say no, and that rejecting him came with consequences. Maybe not direct threats, maybe not retaliation, but opportunities suddenly dried up. Calls went unanswered. Access disappeared. Howard's story became a reminder that even celebrities, people the public assumes are powerful, can feel pressure around someone like Diddy. Even they struggle to maintain boundaries when the person applying the pressure holds so much influence. And that realization made the public rethink everything. Suddenly, old videos where Diddy embraced younger artists too tightly didn't look the same. Photos where he stood close to actors, athletes, and musicians took on a different tone. The internet began analyzing old footage for clues, dissecting body language, commenting on facial expressions, and asking whether Diddy's behavior had always been right in front of everyone. And all of this unfolded while federal investigators continued examining allegations connected to Diddy's lifestyle. As the legal situation intensified, more insiders stepped back, refusing to be associated with him publicly. People who used to live in his orbit started protecting themselves, deleting photos, limiting contact, refusing to comment. And that sudden distancing created the impression that the empire Diddy built had cracks forming everywhere. Terrence Howard's revelation didn't break the empire, but it made the cracks visible. Through all the noise, Howard remained calm. He didn't double down. He didn't add extra details. He simply spoke his truth and moved on. That authenticity is what made the impact so strong. People trusted him. They believed him. They felt that what he described was exactly what he experienced, nothing more, nothing less. And that human honesty made people question whether other celebrities had their own stories they never felt safe enough to share. Hollywood thrives on illusion, glamour, beauty, fame, and the idea that everyone behind the scenes is just as flawless as they appear on screen. But Howard's simple story shattered that illusion. It reminded everyone that fame is not a shield, that even respected actors can find themselves in situations where something feels wrong, and that sometimes the most shocking revelations aren't explosive allegations, they're quiet. Moments that force people to reevaluate the world they thought they understood. Howard didn't claim to have all the answers. He didn't claim to expose a conspiracy. He simply pulled back the curtain, and what people saw behind it changed everything as the public tried to process what Terrence Howard had revealed. The focus began shifting away from one isolated experience and toward the bigger picture. The entertainment world is built like a maze, full of hallways that look glamorous on the outside, but lead to rooms most people never see. And when someone like Howard breaks the silence, even for a moment, people start wondering what else has been kept hidden in those rooms. Suddenly, every rumor, every old interview, every strange moment caught on. Cameras started resurfacing like pieces of a puzzle that had been scattered for decades. What made Howard's story so powerful was that it aligned with something people had sensed about Diddy for years but couldn't articulate. It wasn't about crimes. It wasn't about proving guilt. It was about energy, and energy that many celebrities said they felt when they were around him. Some said he was charming but unpredictable. Others described him as magnetic but overwhelming. A few said he could switch from friendly to intense in the blink of an eye. And now, with the spotlight shining on him harder than ever, these scattered impressions took on new meaning. Industry insiders began hinting that Diddy had a way of making people feel like they owed him something. He gave opportunities. He boosted careers. He opened doors that otherwise stayed locked. And once a person accepted that help, they entered a world where reciprocation didn't always mean business. Sometimes meant loyalty, silence, or going along with things they weren't comfortable with. Not everyone experienced this firsthand, but those who did claimed it was a subtle kind of pressure, the kind that didn't need to be spoken out loud. You simply knew what the expectations were. In the middle of this renewed scrutiny, stories from old party attendees resurfaced online. People who once brushed off those memories now felt empowered to revisit them. Some recalled parties that shifted from harmless fun to something more adult than they expected. Others mentioned rooms in Diddy's mansions that seemed purposely hidden, spaces guests weren't supposed to enter unless invited. Former assistants said they felt like they needed to read Diddy's mood the way a flight crew reads turbulence, ready to adjust, ready to calm, ready to placate. But most of these individuals never spoke publicly. They talked among themselves privately, quietly, in group chats or behind closed doors. And the reason was simple: fear. Diddy's empire wasn't just wealth, it was reach. He had connections in music, film, fashion, tech, nightlife, real estate, advertising, and media. Going against someone with that level of influence felt dangerous. Not dangerous in the sense of violence, dangerous in the sense of being shut out of opportunities that took years to earn. This is why Terrence Howard's revelation struck a nerve. He was respected. He was established. He had nothing to gain by speaking, and nothing to lose by staying quiet. So when he chose to share that moment of discomfort, people who had similar experiences felt validated for the first time. It wasn't just about Diddy anymore. It was about how power can distort relationships, how fame can mask wrongdoing, how silence protects those who don't deserve protection. Meanwhile, fans watched Diddy's public appearances with a different lens. Old footage where he got too close to male celebrities started trending again. People analyzed his expressions, his body language, the way he hugged people, the way he complimented them. Clips that once looked funny or harmless suddenly felt layered. People recalled moments where musicians joked about feeling weird vibes around him. And although none of these moments proved anything by themselves, they contributed to a growing sense that something in Diddy's world had always been off. What made things more interesting was the shift in the music industry's attitude. Emerging artists who once idolized Diddy now stayed silent or spoke ambiguously about him. Veteran artists who used to praise him now dodged questions. Even producers who owed parts of their careers to him seemed hesitant to speak publicly. This silence created an atmosphere of suspicion, because silence in Hollywood is rarely neutral. It usually means someone knows more than they want to admit. Terrence Howard, for his part, didn't amplify the story. He didn't go on a media tour. He didn't exploit the moment. He simply said what he experienced and let it stand on its own. That restraint made his story even more credible. And the restraint also made the public wonder how many other stories existed, buried under years of silence and fear. Howard cracked open the door, but he didn't push it further. He didn't need to. The world did the pushing for him. At the same time, people started revisiting the long-standing rumors about Diddy's relationships and interactions with other celebrities. Some whispered that he had a habit of getting too close, too fast. Others said he tried to mix business with personal interests, often blurring the lines until they became impossible to separate. A few hinted that Diddy wanted more control over certain individuals than was appropriate. These stories were never proven. They remained rumors. But the fact that they existed at all made the public wonder whether Terrence Howard's quiet experience was just one thread in a much bigger tapestry. Meanwhile, the federal investigation added weight to everything happening. Agents weren't just looking into financial matters, they were reportedly examining behavioral patterns, past allegations, and the environments Diddy created. And while Howard's story wasn't part of any lawsuit or official complaint, it added cultural context to an unfolding situation that already felt explosive. Throughout this growing storm, one thing became increasingly clear. Terrence Howard unintentionally opened the floodgates. Not by accusing, not by attacking, but by telling the truth about a moment that stayed with him. A moment that countless celebrities understood, even if they never said so. It became a cultural turning point. Reminder that even the most powerful figures can be questioned. Even the most protected legacies can be reevaluated. And even in a world built on silence, one simple moment of honesty can shake the entire foundation. Terrence Howard's claims didn't just open a door, they blew the hinges off. And when he hinted that the public had barely scratched the surface of what powerful men in entertainment do behind closed doors, the entire Hollywood machine shifted. Because now, it wasn't just about Diddy. It wasn't about one man's lifestyle or one label's culture. Terrence was suggesting something deeper, something systemic. Something that's been whispered in green rooms and private estates for decades. And the moment he said those words, you don't know the half of it. The speculation reached a fever pitch. People started revisiting old interviews. Old clips, old award show moments where major celebrities acted just a little too nervous. A little too guarded, a little too uncomfortable when Diddy's name came up. Suddenly fans were posting timelines, screenshots, freeze-frame clips with slow-motion analysis. Was this celebrity avoiding eye contact? Was that artist laughing a little too hard? Was that actor dodging a question that seemed harmless at the time? And somehow, all roads kept circling back to the same recurring question. What exactly did Diddy have over people? And why were so many stars afraid to talk until now? According to Terrence, it wasn't just rumors, it was leverage. Years of connections, favors, private parties with no cameras. And enough influence to either launch someone's career into the stratosphere or bury it before it even started. And the moment Terrence broke the silence, people started remembering things they had ignored for years. Strange friendships, sudden fallouts, artists who vanished from the industry after one disagreement, actors who never worked again after refusing someone powerful. And that's when 50 Cent jumped back into the conversation with one sentence that sent shockwaves through social media. People thought I was trolling. Nah. I was warning y'all. Fans were stunned because 50 had been talking about Diddy for years. He joked about the parties. He teased the rumors. He questioned the energy. But underneath the jokes was a man who had seen too much and kept the receipts. And now, after the lawsuits, after the raids, after the investigations, his words were aging like prophecy. Terrence Howard confirming even a portion of what people suspected made it feel like the entire culture had been gaslit for decades. But Terrence didn't stop there. In another interview, he hinted that the industry was built on a dangerous kind of loyalty. The kind where silence is currency, and the truth is too expensive to say out loud. He talked about actors who played along, artists who followed the rules, and others who walked away from fame just to protect themselves from situations they never wanted to be part of. And this is where things get even darker. Because when Terrence mentioned a relationship list, a private catalog that allegedly detailed who was connected to who, and how fans lost their minds. That phrase alone sparked thousands of theories. People wanted to know, was it romantic? Was it political? Was it blackmail material? Or was it simply a map of loyalty and leverage inside one of the most powerful entertainment circles in history? Terrence refused to break names, but he didn't deny that some of the biggest icons in music and film were connected in ways the public would never imagine. And suddenly, every old rumor resurfaced at once. Secret deals, quiet settlements, whispered favors, friendships that made no sense. Careers that seemed guided by someone behind the scenes. Meanwhile, 50 Cent stayed in full commentator mode, posting, joking, hinting, throwing gasoline on the conversation without ever explicitly confirming anything. He didn't need to. Terrence had already validated the tone. The lawsuits validated the concern. The raids validated the severity. And now, the public felt like they were finally seeing the real picture. One detail that caught fans off guard was Terrence describing how fear operated in Hollywood. He said some people weren't afraid of losing their jobs, they were afraid of losing their safety. Others were terrified of secrets being exposed, connections being revealed, or personal decisions being twisted into career-ending scandals. And that fear kept everyone in line. Then he dropped another bomb. Somebody finally said no. And that changed everything. People immediately began connecting that line to the timeline of lawsuits and public accusations hitting Diddy in rapid succession. It felt like a chain reaction, one person speaking out, giving courage to the next, until the dam broke. And once the dam broke, the pattern came into focus. Stories sounding similar, behaviors repeating. Testimonies aligning. Terrence Howard didn't claim to know everything, but he made it clear. He saw enough to recognize a pattern. He saw how power manipulated trust, how favors turned into traps, and how relationships in the industry weren't always what they appeared to be. He also saw how the truth was becoming unavoidable. No matter how much money or influence tried to bury it, fans began rewatching old interviews of Terrence. Back when he seemed frustrated, overlooked, or misunderstood. People realized he had been hinting at this dynamic for years about how unfair Hollywood was, how dangerous the wrong circles could be, and how some people succeeded not because they were talented, but because they were protected. And now, with everything happening to Diddy publicly, the industry's illusion of invincibility was collapsing in real time. No one was too big to fall. No one was too protected to be exposed. And Terrence Howard was one of the few who had the courage and the platform to say what many whispered for years. Still, fans couldn't deny the looming question. If Terrence knows this much, what else hasn't he said yet? Because the way he spoke, calm, steady, confident, didn't sound like a man guessing. It sounded like a man who had seen the blueprint up close. And while he may never reveal every detail, one thing became undeniable. Once Terrence Howard spoke up, Hollywood couldn't pretend anymore. The truth was out. The silence was broken. And now the world was watching. And before you click away, let me leave you with this, because if there's one thing this entire situation proves, it's that the truth always finds a way out. It doesn't matter how powerful someone is, how many doors they control, or how long the silence has been protected. Eventually, people start talking. And once the first voice speaks, the next one follows. And then the next. And suddenly, the whole world is listening. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Terrence Howard is revealing real industry secrets? Do you believe 50 Cent was right this entire time? Or do you think there's still way more we haven't been told? Drop your thoughts, theories, and questions down in the comments, because trust me, the conversation is only just beginning. Make sure you hit that like button, because it tells YouTube that stories like this matter. And subscribe if you're new here, because we're diving deeper, uncovering more, and breaking down every angle as this situation continues to unfold. Turn on all notifications, so when the next bombshell drops you, don't miss it. This story is far from over, and I'll be right here to walk you through every twist and every truth. Every truth.